Hey friends, Chubby Meeple, back with another game for you today. Still digging through the Gen Con games that picked up either review copies or things that I bought. Today, we're going to take a look at a game that was provided by a publisher, and that game is Tower Up. This is from Monolith Games, and is a game for 2 to 4 players, ages 8 and up, that'll play in about 30 to 45 minutes. We'll jump over the table, I'll give you a brief overview of how to play the game, and then I'll come back here and tell you my thoughts on Tower Up. Tower Up is a city building game for 2 to 4 players that sees players taking on the role of essentially city planners that are constructing buildings on the board, which represents a city. Now your city is divided into 5 segments that you'll notice there are 5 different colors. You've got a gray segment, a pink segment, there's an orangish colored segment, we've got this yellow color, and then there's another lighter gray up in the upper right hand corner, upper left hand in this video anyway. To set up a game of Tower Up, what you're looking at on the table is a 3-player setup. The game plays 2 to 4. There is an alternate side of the board, which I'll show later in the video for 2-player setup. But we're looking at a 3-player setup. To set up a game of Tower Up, each player will select a player color. You have pink, yellow, green, and there's also an orange color. Players are going to get a player board matching their color, 10 rooftops to match their color, a construction cone that will be used for in-game scoring. You will also get a black, gray, brown, and white construction vehicle that will be used to score along your tracks. And then you'll get one building of each color. So a gray, a black, a brown, and a white in your, so one of each color essentially. So each player will have that. You're free to keep your 10 buildings set up however you would like next to your player board. So you'll notice each player has theirs set up a little bit differently. Yellow and pink have them spread out. Green chose to stack theirs. The number of building tops that you have is open information. There's no hidden information in this game at all, so you have to make sure those are all visible and all players can see not only your building tops, but the number and color of pieces for buildings that you actually have in your supply ready to use. You're then going to take the tray up here. This comes right out of the box exactly as you see it, and is separated into compartments that hold the 4 different colors of buildings. So you have a compartment for your white, your black, your gray, and your brown buildings. You'll then shuffle up the deck of building cards and set them in the designated space. You'll deal 3 of them out so all players can see 3 cards. And there's also a section here for a discard pile as cards get selected. You will then, to set up your board, you will then look at the 3 cards that have come out. And you will look at the color of the building piece on the bottom of each of the 3 cards. So in this case, we have a gray, we have a black, and then we have a wild. If it's a wild card, you can pick any color that you would like. And in this case, we picked brown. Those 3 pieces, you take one of each color. So in this case, gray, brown, or gray, black, and we chose brown for the wild. And you put those anywhere on the board you would like. So we've got gray here, we've got black here, and then brown is up here. You get to put those anywhere on the board that you would like. You'll then also shuffle and deal out 3 of the 10 goal cards, and you'll place those up here at the top of the board where everyone can see them. The 3 that you see on the board are labeled with an S in the lower right-hand corner. These are starter cards, and they're recommended for your first game. And then you have tokens that score anywhere from 7 to 3 points, depending on who achieves the goals first. So as you achieve a goal, it doesn't become unavailable to the other players. They just score less for it. So you'll put those score markers out. In this game, it's set up for 3 players. I have all 4 score markers out. If you're only playing 3 players, you can leave one of these 3s out of here. Since you only have 3 players, you don't necessarily need all 4 score markers. The first player is the player who lives on the highest floor, or you can determine that randomly, of course. And on your turn, you're going to do one of 2 things. You're either going to place a building on the board, which will then cause buildings around it to grow, and then you'll score. Or you can select one of the cards that is on display to collect additional building pieces. You're going to do one of those 2 things on your turn. We're going to say this green player over here is the first player, mainly because he's the easy one for me to get to on this video. And then play is going to go clockwise around the table. So for illustration purposes and placement rules, I'm going to show you, we're going to say our green player here is going to take a turn where they're going to play buildings rather than collect pieces. The rule for building placement, it's fairly simple rules, but you're going to pick one of your pieces and you're going to place it on the board adjacent to a building that already exists. So I would have to place adjacent to this gray building, to this brown building, or to this black building over here. Now, let's say I chose to go next to this brown building because it's close to my player board, easy for me to reach. It's not the best strategy, but let's say that's what I'm going to do. I cannot place a brown building adjacent to another brown building. So I would have to choose one of the other three colors. In this case, I'd have to use black, white, or gray to place adjacent to the brown building. The same is also true if I were to place next to this gray. I could not place a gray building in one of these three squares. You must always play adjacent to a building that's already on the map, so it has to be connected by a street or a road in order for it to be considered adjacent. So this player is going to take this black building, they're going to plop it right here. You then, once you've placed a building or started a new building, you then have to grow all of the buildings that are adjacent to the building you just placed. So in this case, I'm going to have to grow this brown building by placing a brown piece on top of it. It's important to note that if I did not have a brown piece to grow this brown building, I would not be able to play adjacent to that brown building because you have to grow everything. If you don't have the pieces for it, you simply can't play there. The last piece so you have place, you have grow, and then you have score. The way you score is you take one of your building toppers, and you will top off one of the two buildings, in this case one of the two buildings, that was just played. Let's say we want to top off this brown building. I place this on here. Since this building has two floors or two pieces to it, I'm going to move my brown score marker up 2 spaces on my score marker. My turn is done. I'm going to move to this pink player just to show you what happens if someone were to play up there in that area again. So let's say our pink player really likes what's going on up there and they want to get in on this action. So they're going to take their white piece here and they're going to play it here. Now by rule, they have to grow the other two buildings that it's adjacent to, so they have to grow both the black and the brown. So we're going to grow the black building by 1, and we're going to grow the brown building by 1. The pieces actually fit over the tops of the building toppers, so even though our green player had a building topper on this brown building, it can be covered up. Green is still considered to have possession or partial ownership of that building for meeting goals. So if this building happened to be in one of these parks, for example, even though the green marker is no longer on top of the building, green still counts as would still count as having a building in a park for purposes of attaining this particular goal. Pink then needs to place one of their building toppers on one of the 3 buildings they just played, either the short white one, the black that is now 2 floors, or they could take over the brown. We're going to take the black building, and then pink moves their black marker up on the track 2 places. Our yellow player is going to do the same thing, except they're going to kind of hang out in their own world over here. We're going to play a white building here, grow this black building, and then the yellow player is actually going to choose to claim this white building, even though it's only 1 story. They move their white marker 1 piece, but now they have a building that is in a park, which goes toward this goal up here of having 4 buildings in parks, or having a building in 4 different parks. The other goals at the table that we have on the board are having a building, owning a building of each different color. So once a player has their color building topper on buildings of the 4 different colors, they get to claim the next highest point value. And then the other goal up here is to have a building in each of the 5 colored districts on the map. So again, once a player has their colored building topper in 5 buildings, 1 building in each different type, then they would get to take the next highest score marker as well. And again, because the green player up here has this little green band from where their building topper was, they still have ownership in that. So even though they're not on the top of that building any longer, they still have a building in this yellow colored area to count toward this 3rd goal up here. We're going to go back to the green player, and I will show you how we do the other option on your turn. Green player has white and gray. The other option you can do on your turn is to collect additional pieces so that you can have more options available to you and actually be able to play into places that you would like to play. So our green player could place a gray building here, grow this white building because they have the pieces to do so, and then they could claim the gray building and that would give them a building in a park. They would not be able to place here because they don't have any black pieces available to grow this building, and they couldn't place, well, I guess they could place here as well. They could put their gray piece here and grow the white building. They could not go here because they need a black and a brown to grow that. So our green player says, you know what, I'm going to take a card and I'm going to gain some more pieces. They look at the 3 available cards up here, and the cards come in different varieties. Every card will give you new building pieces. You have cards like this that show you the wild symbol. This means you get to pick. In this case, if the green player were to take this card, they would get to choose 2 building pieces in the color of their choice, and those could be the same color. They could be 2 different colors. This piece, in addition to giving you a black and a brown building piece, also lets you move your white construction truck 1 space. And then the final piece gives you a gray, a brown, and a black building piece to add to your supply. Our green player is simply going to take this card. They're going to collect a brown piece, a black piece, and then they get to move their white construction truck up 1 space. This card then gets discarded, and then the next card comes out and is placed so that other players have access. That is the green player's entire turn. One thing to point out, you'll notice on these player boards, there are columns that have stars in them. What those denote is as you're moving, you're building buildings on the map and you're growing buildings, you're placing your building marker out, you'll get to move your trucks. When all of your trucks have met or passed a column of stars, you immediately get to take an extra turn once you've completed the first one. So if I were to take a turn that would get my yellow marker or my white marker here to hit the star, these other trucks are passed, for example, do it like this, white would hit there, pink would immediately get another turn. They would finish the current turn with whatever they were doing, and they'd get to immediately take another turn. And that can be a turn of the same type where they place more buildings, grow and score, or they could simply pick a card to get more pieces. Play is going to continue like this around the board until one player plays their 10th building topper. So once one player has played their 10th topper, and you'll notice when the green player took cards this last turn, when they chose to take cards to gain more pieces, they didn't move their construction trucks up at all, and they didn't place the building topper out. So if you're taking cards, you're not scoring that turn, essentially. Once a player places their 10th building marker out, you're going to finish out the round. So players have the same number of turns. So our green player was the first player, so our yellow player would get the last turn in this game. So if green or pink are the one to place their last building marker out, the other players will get a turn until yellow has played. If yellow places their last building marker first and ends the game will just end immediately because all players have had an equal number of turns. We have now reached the end of the game. Our pink player down here has played their 10th and final building topper, and that gave our yellow player one more turn since they were the final player because our green player was our start player. We now enter final scoring. Before we tally the final scores, we need to take one more step. That step is to count the number of buildings on the board that has your color of player marker on top of it. So, for our green player over here, our green player has 1, 2, 3 buildings that still have their green marker on top. So they're going to take the little construction cone that they were given at the start of the game, and they're going to count 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and they're going to place that construction cone in that 3rd space. And that will give them additional scoring when we total up points. Our pink player down here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the pink player is going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and place their construction cone. Our yellow player looking at the board notices they have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they will count their cone over 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we can begin final scoring to determine who our winning player is. To do so, we simply total up the points that are above the top of the board that are above the column where each colored truck and the construction cone are. So for this case, we have 7 points for white, plus 4 for the brown truck, puts us at 11, plus another 7 for gray, puts us at 18. Another 4 down here for the black truck will put us at 22. We then get to add 9 points for where the construction cone is, so that puts us at 31 points. We then have a total of 17 points, which will put us at 48 total. So we're at 48 points for our yellow player. Will the green player beat 48 points? Let's find out. Our green player gets 4 points for Their white truck, 7 points for brown, so they're at 11. Another 4 for gray puts them at 15. 5 for their black truck will put them at 20. 5 for their cone puts them at 25. And then they have a total of 13 points here for a total of 38. So they're at 38. Our yellow player is still our current winner with 48 points. Let's see how our pink player did. 4 points for the yellow truck, 4 points for the brown truck. That is 8 points. We then get 13 points for the gray truck. That puts us at 21. Then we do another 4 points here for the black truck at 25. And then we tack on another 11 points for here, which will put us at 36. Then for our end game scoring, we have 15 points. So that's going to take us from 36 up to 51 points. The pink player will be our winner. 51, 48, 38. Had there been a tie, among the tied players, the player with the least amount of building pieces left would be the winner. And if among those tied players they're still tied, those tied players simply share the victory. That is everything you need to know to play Tower Up. When playing a 2-player game of Tower Up, you'll simply flip the board over and fold it in half to use the 2-player map. Setup is the exact same, with players collecting the same trucks, the same number of building toppers, their construction cone and their color, as well as starting with 1 building piece. You'll still draw 3 cards for players to choose from when determining which pieces they would like to take, and you'll still seed the board or start the board with 3 buildings based on the colors of the bottom piece of the card. So in this case, you see a brown building, a black building, and a white building on the board to set the game up. You also will only use a 7-point and a 3-point marker for the goals. You won't use the 5-point or the second 3. Gameplay works exactly the same, scoring is exactly the same. So that is Tower Up, a little city building game, 2 to 4 players, very quick to play, 30, 45 minutes. You may be close to an hour on your first couple of games, especially if you're teaching new folks how to play. Tower Up, I love this game. This is a game that, while I was at Gen Con, I did all my shopping on Friday during the day. I was done, had 0 plans to buy anything else game related at Gen Con. Did it all on Friday, knocked it out. Then I went to a review event with Flat River Group, who helps distribute games for Monolith and other publishers. Played this game at the demo night, at least a short demo of it, and had to have it. This game comes out in September, so it'll be available in retail coming up here in a few weeks, about a month. So keep your eyes out for it if this is something that looks interesting to you. Tower Up is, to me, a great design. First of all, I'm a sucker for a good insert. We're going to just go production-wise. We're going to go production and get that out of the way now. I'm a sucker for a good insert, and this has a fantastic insert. You saw the card tray that literally pops out of the box, holds the 4 building pieces, the 4 colors of building pieces, as well as provides a little stand for the cards to stand up so that all players can see the cards at all times. If you're playing, obviously you saw in the video, the majority of the video, a 3-player game where we use the 4th side of the board for that card stand. Works beautifully. Also works obviously in a 2-player game with the smaller board. In a 4-player game, if you've got a player on each side of the board, you kind of set that thing off to a corner somewhere where everyone can see it. I've played this game many times at 4 players. It's very easy for everyone to be able to see that stand of cards. But I love that design of being able to just pop that tray out of the box, put it on the table, and you're ready to go, essentially. So you're killing the setup time, you're shortening that setup time, and making it easier to just dive into the gameplay. Gameplay is not overly complex. You put a building on the board, you grow everything that's adjacent to it, and you score your points for whatever color that you chose to claim with your building topper. Or you pick a card and you collect those pieces. Gameplay-wise, rules-wise, very simple, very straightforward. However, there is a surprising amount of strategy in this game, in that you have to make sure that, hey, I really need to move my gray truck forward so I can get my extra turn, or my gray truck's behind everything else. I need to get the gray truck moving up so I score more points for it. But you have to figure out strategically the best way to do that. Obviously, you want to grow a gray building to maximize the movement of that gray truck, but you have to have the colored pieces to be able to play something adjacent to gray that can't be gray. So you have to play a black, brown, or white building adjacent to the gray building that you're looking to grow or claim. And you also have to have the pieces for any other buildings that happen to be adjacent to the space you're playing into. So you really have to keep an eye on the pieces that you have and make sure that you have enough pieces to be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And then the question becomes, do I put a white piece here, grow this gray building to a 3rd tier or a 4th tier, claim that gray building and move my gray truck 3 or 4 spaces forward? Or If I don't have the ability to do that, maybe I put a gray building down and grow something else and just put my building topper on that single gray building and only move my gray up one. It may not benefit me right then and there for in the short term for points for that particular gray construction truck on my scoring tracker, but it might get me closer to one of those in-game goals because I only need to have my building topper as part of that building. Even if someone comes along and covers it later, let's say that one gray building is in a park or in a colored section of the city that I haven't claimed a building in yet. Or maybe I don't have a gray building at all and I've got brown, black, and white. All I need is a gray building to claim that one building of each color. It may be worth doing that and beating my opponent to those 7 points or 5 points and not having to settle for the 3. So there's some strategy there. There's also some strategy in looking around because you're only growing buildings that are adjacent to a space that gets played into. So if when you're looking at the board and you see, hey, if I play into this particular space, I can grow this building, and once that building grows, I can put my building topper on top of that building, and there are now no longer streets adjacent. There are no longer any streets adjacent to that building, meaning that building's not going to grow. I'm guaranteed now to have that building at the end of the game with my colored topper on it, which helps where my construction cone can go. So there's some strategy to looking at those places and playing. Maybe it's not even the tallest building. You're just playing something. Hey, here's a single space that if I put a building here, I'll grow something that's adjacent to that, and I'll claim this little tiny one building. There are a few spaces on the board that doing that is a great strategy because there's only one road into it. I play a white piece, for example. I grow a gray building that's adjacent. I claim the one white piece that's only 1 story tall, move my white truck one up. But that space is in a park, and it's in a section of color that I need. So I'm getting a white building toward one building of the 4 pieces, or one building of the 4 colors. I'm getting one of the parks toward having 4, and I'm getting one of the spaces toward having a building in each of the 5 colored spaces. Plus, I'm guaranteed to have my building topper on that building at the end of the round or at the end of the game because there are no other roads going into that space. It's super thinky. It's super fun. It's rules light enough that you can play this. The box says 8+. You could easily play this. There's no reading in this. You could play this with an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old. I would even argue you could probably even play this with a 6 or 7-year-old, especially if that child has been playing games for a while and can kind of strategize a little bit. The tactile pieces themselves, the plastic pieces of the buildings themselves, the floors, as well as the building toppers, they all fit together nicely. They're designed in such a way that I put my building topper on, someone else comes over and grows a building. They don't have to take my topper off and give it back. They just simply put a piece over the top of it and keep going. So it's a very cool design in that. You saw in the video how the city just kind of sprouts up on the table as these buildings continue to grow, and by the end of the game you've got this kind of metropolis that you've all built together. That's very cool to see and very fun. Definitely turns heads if you're playing this game in a public place, a coffee shop, a bar, a tea shop, a game store, anything like that. People are going to look and go, what is this over here on the table that I'm seeing? Because it just has that look that captures you and draws you in. Great game. Fantastic game. I absolutely love Tower Up, and I brought up, I did all my shopping on Friday. I played this at an event on Friday night, a Flat River media event. I went back to their booth on Saturday. They were selling copies of this at Gen Con. So I went back to their booth and actually bought a copy. The copy that you saw on the video, however, was a review copy because they gave out review copies later in the day on Saturday. So I bought this I did all my shopping Friday during the day, went to the media event on Friday night, bought this on Saturday during the day. I had another media event with Flat River on Saturday evening where I was given Tower Up as a review copy. So I had 2 copies of this. I sold the one that I bought, kept the review copy so that I could bring it to you and show you how fantastic of a game this is. I highly recommend this game. It's a great family game. It's not necessarily your staple of game night, but it is one that you could play a couple of times in a game night. If you've got a game night that's 4, 5, 6 hours long, you could play a couple of games of this and still have time to play something meaty and crunchy that would last 2 or 3 hours. Highly, highly, highly recommend Tower Up. Pick it up in September when it's available. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'll happily answer those. Until next time, keep gaming, friends.